Well, we're going to move on again. Well, actually, look, you've had your hand up for a while. I'm going to take your question. Lady in the front there.
Look, my one question is basically, or my one comment, or passing comment, is that so many times you've brought up women in Islam. I'd just like to correct that I've read the Quran, and all Muslim scholars would agree with me that Islam gives women a lot of rights. We over and over give women in Islam through the Quran. I may not say it through individuals who preach the religion, but Islam through the Quran gives women a lot of rights, and I need that to be heard. I need that to everyone to understand and hear that. I mean, I am a young Muslim woman myself. I sit before you, I have a voice, and I can speak to you, and I can look you in the eye, and I do have my rights. And when I go to Iran, I'm actually Iranian as well, so when I go to Iran, I also have my rights. I need it to be heard that the Quran, Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us our rights. Individuals in countries and people who represent our religion may not, and they may do the wrong thing to sort of stand in front and show us religion and preach us religion, but Islam does.
All right, we're going to take that as a comment, a very passionate one at that. Okay.
Well, no. No, we're not. No, we're not going to take it as a comment. I can see your face, I can see your hair, and I can see you sitting in an audience with young gentlemen. Don't you tell me you can do any of that in Iran.
I can, though.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you cannot.
I can. In Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where I have been, my hair would be out. My hair would be out because my veil would be little. My hair would be, it may be covered a little bit, but just like in the Bible, in the letter to the Corinthians, it says to cover your head, to be modest.
It's a shame she spoiled what could have been a perfectly good statement.
All right, okay, I'm sorry.
Modesty would be there. I mean, you've been talking about these cheap jokes and things throughout this whole conversation, but you're the only one making the cheap comments.
You insult your sisters in Tehran who are being beaten,
and
raped every day when you say that they have their rights in the Islamic Republic. It's an insult to the women of Iran.
I do not.
Okay. We're nearly out of time. You're watching Q&A.
And in Iran, freedom comes at a deadly cost. A woman's choice to unveil can now lead to flogging, prison, and even execution. The new hijab law enforces harsh penalties for those who defy strict dress codes. Iranian women, however, refuse to back down, with their courage shining amid repression. Our next report explores their fight, the systemic control they endure, and the hope they ignite.
In the shadowed streets of Tehran, a young woman pulls off her headscarf, letting her hair cascade freely in the breeze. As she steps into the public eye, she knows the risk. She knows the price, yet for a fleeting moment, she feels alive, reclaiming a freedom long denied. In Iran, women's bodies have become battlegrounds for control. Their right to choose is stripped away. Patriarchy dictates their lives. But each strand of unveiled hair has now become a silent scream against oppression. And now, a new law looms over them, imposing severe penalties for defying hijab mandates. The legislation promotes the culture of chastity and hijab, enforcing strict dress codes and criminalizing dissent. Women who unveil will face fines of up to $15,700, flogging, and at least 15 years of imprisonment. In some cases, death sentences loom, turning acts of personal choice into crimes punishable by death.
The international community must not stand idly by as Iranian authorities further codify repression and even resort to the death penalty to suppress dissent against compulsory veiling. They must use their leverage to press the Iranian authorities to withdraw this law and abolish compulsory veiling in law and practice. They must also pursue legal pathways to hold Iranian officials accountable for committing widespread and systematic human rights violations against women and girls through the implementation of compulsory veiling.
But this is not all. The law also extends its reach, emboldening public harassment. Iran's Article 60 will now punish any attempt to stop such harassment, making defenders of women's rights criminals themselves.
Nearly all provisions of this law contravene fundamental principles, such as Article 9 of the Iranian Constitution, which prohibits legislation that undermines citizens' freedoms even in the name of national sovereignty. The law stipulates lengthy prison sentences for those persistently opposing mandatory hijab and encouraging others to do the same.
Businesses and institutions are not spared either. Taxi drivers, schools and broadcasters must report non-compliance. Failure to act will invite fines and punishment. This crackdown follows the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022, when her death in custody ignited a firestorm of protests. Iranian women, fueled by grief and rage, defied dress codes in acts of bravery. Videos of their resistance spread like wildfire. Recently, a young student stripped down to her underwear in protest. She was later taken to a psychiatric hospital, her defiance punished with cruelty. Since the incident, authorities have imposed hijab clinics to treat defiant women. The move has sparked outrage, further deepening societal tensions.
This allowed for our voices to be heard by the world. What us girls did made this movement into something that continues. Now, all over the country, women are protesting the compulsory hijab in any way they can. I definitely think it made a difference.
Since the implementation, even Iranian leaders expressed unease. President Masoud Pezeshkian warned of growing discontent. Critics argue the law's enforcement will deepen unrest because the regime's grip on power is challenged by the courage of its women. For now, Iranian women are waging a battle against a relentless hierarchy of control. They plead that the silence of the international community must come to an end because oppressors thrive on indifference. They declare that women deserve lives free from tyranny.
This was Iran 40 years ago. I know it's hard to believe, but this is literally how we used to dress. This is Iran now.
Women in Pahlavi, Iran did have the right to vote. They had the right to divorce. Women were in all fields as in terms of their careers. There was not really too many limitations. He, in essence, forces women to remove their headscarves by law and by force. And it was very traumatic and in the sense that society was not ready for it and people did not want that. And then later, his son actually allows and reduces the enforcement of this. So that's why you have pictures throughout the 60s and 70s of women in miniskirts as well as a full body covering. In particular, because of the forced removal of the hijab on women, when the Islamists come to power, they use this as a cultural marker. And so in the same way that the removal was forced in 1979, you have the forced reimposition of different types of hijab on women. It was really the signifier for the laws to come, right? The elimination of women from the legal profession, the elimination of women from so much the public sphere. Once the decree goes out that women will have to wear hijab, it will be mandatory the next day, which is International Women's Day in 1979, you have tens of thousands of women who go out into the streets and they protest against this.
The imposition of Islamic law here has started with an order to women to cover their heads in government offices. Many are furious. Only a minority in Tehran already follow the instruction.
I think the biggest movements have been in 1999. So you have during the Khatami administration, that was largely a university student movement. Men are the faces of that movement, but you have definitely the involvement of women. Women have been part of all of the protests that have occurred over the past 43 years and before. And then in 2009, a woman again became the face of the Green Movement. Neda Agha Sultan was murdered on film, on camera, and that was largely a political movement for reform. This one is very significant because how it crosses all sorts of different lines of Iranian society. First of all, the ethno-religious line, even the slogan, Zan Zendegi Azadi, women, life, freedom, is a Kurdish slogan. And then importantly, men. As women went out into the streets, men very quickly joined them. So to basically say that this is not just about women or ethnic groups, but it's about human rights. And then I would be remiss to not add the importance of the Raisi administration. The fact that this administration has, during this time period when Iran is facing so many economic problems and so much budgetary mismanagement, has decided to institute a re-Islamization program. All those members of Gen Z who can't get jobs, who can't get into the universities, they look and they see, is the government helping pay their bills? Is the government helping them get jobs? Is the government helping with the budget? No, the government is going after them for hijab. They're risking everything. They're risking their very lives. We're in the thousands now that have been arrested. We are in the dozens that have been reported as dead. Students and younger people who are not of 18 years old, they get blackballed out of universities. Those who are university students will be expelled. And this is assuming that one is not jailed, tortured, or doesn't die in custody. And so it is very much the basic elements of human rights that they are risking by engaging in the protests.
The Obama administration is working hard to sell the framework nuclear agreement with Iran, but there are new questions about what exactly the U.S. agreed to. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill, where Congress will have to decide whether to try and block that deal. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning. Discrepancies emerged over the weekend between the U.S. version of this framework and the Iranian version. Discrepancies over, for example, how quickly sanctions on Iran would be lifted. Now, U.S. negotiators say it's not surprising that Iran is trying to spin the details in their favor, but it isn't helping to win over skeptics here on Capitol Hill and elsewhere.
I think this deal is a dream deal for Iran, and it's a nightmare deal for the world.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was all over U.S. television Sunday, arguing any deal that lifts sanctions will make Iran richer and more dangerous.
Iran will have billions of dollars flowing to its coffers, not for schools or hospitals or roads, but to pump up its worldwide terror machine.
Presidential hopefuls like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham pummeled the deal too, saying it doesn't address Iran's status as a chief sponsor of terrorism.
Obama is a flawed negotiator. His foreign policy has failed on multiple fronts. Nobody in the region trusts him. The Iranians do not fear or respect him, so he'll never be able to get the best deal.
In an interview with the New York Times, President Obama pushed back.
There is no formula, there is no option to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon that will be more effective than the diplomatic initiative and framework that we put forward.
And California Democrat Dianne Feinstein argued Netanyahu and the other critics haven't presented an alternative.
I don't think it's helpful for Israel to come out and oppose this one opportunity to change a major dynamic, which is downhill, a downhill dynamic in this part of the world.
Negotiators now have less than 3 months to turn that framework into a full-scale agreement. If they succeed, a growing number of lawmakers from both sides say Congress should have the final say on any deal that involves lifting sanctions. Republican Bob Corker chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
If the president feels like this is something that's good for the nation, surely he can sell this to the United States Senate and the House.
And the Senate is moving quickly. They're going to start considering legislation that would require the White House to get congressional approval for a deal as soon as they get back next week. The White House has said the president would veto that legislation, but Senator Corker said over the weekend he's very close to having enough votes to override a presidential veto. Charlie?
Nancy, thanks.
Some of them join us today, and we are grateful for your leadership. Now, as president, I've made it clear that the United States will continue to be a leader in this global movement. We've got a comprehensive strategy. We're shining a spotlight on the dark corners where it persists. Under Hillary's leadership, we're doing more than ever with our annual trafficking report, with new outreach and partnerships, to give countries incentives to meet their responsibilities and calling them out when they don't. I recently renewed sanctions on some of the worst abusers, including North Korea and Eritrea. We're partnering with groups that help women and children escape from the grip of their abusers. We're helping other countries step up their own efforts, and we're seeing results. More nations have passed, and more are enforcing modern anti-trafficking laws. Now, last week, I was proud to welcome to the Oval Office not only a great champion of democracy, but a fierce advocate against the use of forced labor and child soldiers, Aung San Suu Kyi. And as part of our engagement, we'll encourage Burma to keep taking steps to reform, because nations must speak with one voice. Our people and our children are not for sale. But for all the progress that we've made, the bitter truth is that trafficking also goes on right here in the United States. It's the migrant worker unable to pay off the debt to his trafficker, the man lured here with the promise of a job, his documents then taken and forced to work endless hours in a kitchen, the teenage girl beaten, forced to walk the streets. This should not be happening in the United States of America. As president, I directed my administration to step up our efforts.
Attorney, Iranian-American activist Elika Leibon has been outspoken against the regime. Brave thing to do, and joins us now. Appreciate you being with us. There is this line going around from the Tucker Carlson, Bernie Sanders wing that remove the Ayatollah and a worse Ayatollah will come in. Are they right or wrong?
They're absolutely wrong. And it just shows the ignorance of people who are now deciding to use their platforms to speak on matters that they're wholly ignorant about. If they had been following the burgeoning revolution in Iran for the last 46 years, much less the last 3 years in which it took prominence, they would understand that what the Iranian people are calling for is democracy. And what this really displays is that you have this, unity between the woke right and woke left now, who are now descending. You have lefties like Bernie Sanders, who are now descending into the same racism, the same racist view of the Middle East, that everyone in the Middle East is a savage. Everyone are just savages. And therefore, if the Ayatollah goes, there's just going to be more savages to take their place. Why don't you just pay attention to what the Iranian people are telling you? Why don't you open your ears and your mind and actually listen to the people, and then you'll know what's coming?
There's a lot to unpack. Having no knowledge of subjects never kept anybody from opining on cable news. That's sort of a lot of cable news. We try to prevent it here on this program, but it's been known to happen. Want to play you something from Steve Bannon. Take a listen.
President Trump, I do believe, has given the Iranians, hey, you got a shot here to make a deal. He's not looking for a ceasefire. He's not looking for a peace deal. He's looking for your eradication, total capacity of your nuclear weapons. And I think if they take it and jump on it and meet with Witkoff and try to figure something out quickly, basically sign a document that he gives them, maybe with very little changes, there's a possibility he won't engage in combat operations.
Is there any reason to think that whatever the Ayatollah may agree to, that he will stick by that deal after having broken so many nuclear deals in the past?
You know, you have to ask this question: what price does diplomacy come at? A couple of years ago, Obama engaged in the JCPOA, which was the nuclear deal at the time. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, what is a deal? Isn't a deal something where they also get something? They're not just going to say, okay, yeah, we're just going to pack it all in and throw it away for nothing. Of course, it comes at a price. And what price did it come at? It came at the price of $150 billion. It came at the price of expanding its influence across the Middle East, emboldening its proxies. October 7th, that was the price of the last nuclear deal. So when people now talk about this prospect of a deal, what are you trading the deal for? You think you're getting peace at the end of the deal? Then why are we in this position after the last deal?
Fair questions. I'll ask you another one. Where are all the LGBTQ people? Where are all the Free Palestine people worried about civilians in Gaza? Where are all the women's rights folks when you've got LGBTQ people being killed in Tehran? Women have no rights. There's Muslims there living in far worse conditions than Muslims in the West Bank live in.
You know, I'd love to say that they're all silent. I'd love to say that they're all in hiding, but unfortunately, they are loudly and proudly saying hands off Iran. But what they mean is hands off the regime in Iran, which is basically tantamount to saying hands off the Taliban. I mean, what kind of dystopian universe are we living in when the human rights advocates of our time are not saying free the Iranian people from the regime? They're not saying free the Iranian people that are being hanged from cranes. They're not saying free the Iranian people who are having their eyes shot out for protesting. They're saying hands off the regime that's killing them. These are not the people that are champions of humanity anymore. They've done a total about face, and the humanitarians and pacifists are the monsters of our time.
There appears to be a break, at least right now in the world, that I didn't see after the Green Revolution 2009 when President Obama turned his back on those in the streets in Iran. Same thing happened after the young woman was killed for not wearing her hijab. The Biden administration turned its back on those. Do you see a change, A, in the world, but B, also in how Iranians themselves are looking at their own country?
You know, I think what we're going to have to do right now is sort of assess how the situation develops. If this is a situation where they've sort of taken out the nuclear capacities of the regime, but they've actually left the regime in place, that's not anything that's going to be helpful to the Iranian people. It's sort of like taunting them. You're taunting them with the prospect of freedom and then taking it away. So I think the only thing that's going to change the perspective of Iranian people about what the future of Iran is, much less the future of the Middle East, which will obviously dictate the future of the world, is whether this regime does finally collapse at the end of this. If this is just a strategy to weaken its military capabilities and take out its nuclear capabilities, yes, it's good news for the rest of the world, but it's not good news for Iranian people, who will then have had to suffer through war and be traumatized and then be left with the same regime that it had before. So it's sort of a situation where if you're going to do anything, you have to go all the way or don't do it at all.
Elika, you were the right woman for this conversation. I hope I'm never in an argument with you because I will lose. It's good to have you. Thank you very much. We'll see you back.
Thank you. Bye.
Israel is bombing Iran relentlessly. But the truth is, this couldn't have happened without collaboration of Arab rulers in the region. Israel used Syrian airspace to refuel its jets as it struck Iran. The jets, which launched to refuel the Israeli planes, took off from Al Udeid base in Qatar. Iran is being punished for its support for the Palestinian cause. In the region today, you have the axis of resistance, which is constantly subject to war by Israel and the United States, with the aid of the axis of assistance. And the Arab Iron Dome, which surrounds Israel, makes up that axis of assistance. Ask yourself, what have those rulers ever done for the Palestinian cause? And what is their current role in the Gaza genocide? Egypt has been a key facilitator of the Israeli genocidal blockade on Gaza for over a decade. Egypt worked at the beginning of the Gaza genocide to extract extortionate amounts of money from Palestinians attempting to leave Gaza for the enrichment of a businessman very close to the Sisi regime. And now the Egyptian government is stopping those inhumanity with a conscience from reaching Gaza.
Have you ever heard an Arabic woman trying to breastfeed her flaccid child as it dies and her breasts are empty because she's been starved? For the love of humanity and for the love of Islam, please don't do this. Allow us to march to Gaza.
In Jordan, King Abdullah has done everything he can to protect Israel, from arresting Palestinians to facilitating the interception of Iranian drones over their airspace and stopping them from reaching Israel, to taking part in the land bridge which helped Israel circumvent the naval blockade by the Yemeni armed forces. Across the region, rulers preside over billions of people who are deeply opposed to what Israel is doing. However, those rulers have existing covert business relations with the Zionist entity